This evening I would like to welcome Farid Rakun as a part of the ruangrupa collective. And ruangrupa it's possible to say it's a collective of collectives founded in 2000 in Jakarta as a response to a lack of independent art spaces for critical and analytical approaches to artistic action or artistic practice in general. Their work and activities link together art, social sciences, politics, technology, and media to comment on contemporary issues in a form of exhibitions, festivals, art labs, workshops, publishing, research, and education. They organize exhibition, among others, for biennales such as the one in Sao Paulo, Guangzhou, or Venice Biennale. One of the most interesting activities is the educational project Good School, a public learning space that promotes the importance of critical thinking and experimental dialogue through sharing the processes of experience-based learning. ruangrupa is this year the artistic director of Documenta in Kassel, in which they build artistic and economic models based on the principles of collectivity, resource sharing, mutual equality, and friendship as a response to the injuries rooted in the colonialism, capitalism, and the patriarchal structures. And here I would like to leave the floor to our today's guest, Farid Rakun. Welcome and thank you to being part of the series.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jan, and everyone who joins and share your time with us tonight. And also maybe it's good to say I asked Jan and Denisa at that moment to maybe kind of collect some questions so I can start thinking on what I can share with every one of you tonight. And then the questions are amazing. Thank you for that. I'll try to answer them as well as a starting point, maybe not directly, but through some images that I prepared to share with you tonight. I think 10 or 11 images throughout the slides. And then yeah, if hopefully I can answer some, maybe not all, but some of the questions through that format. But in the end, please feel free if you want to ask more questions or feel that there are questions that I left unanswered, etc. So let me share my screen. So this is kind of like a draft. It's going to, this is a story about how we see. Maybe this is a good place to start because then we can move on to other things. How we see Documenta 15, let's say. Something we never thought that we would do or collaborate with an institution like Documenta in this capacity before. When we got the offer, it was kind of we had to regroup and take some days to kind of try to figure out what kind of Documenta edition could be, at least for us. So what we did was to offer what we have gone through or what we are doing at that moment in the end of 2018, which with what Jan said, we just established Good School with other collectives, Serum and Grafis Uruhara in Jakarta. It's yeah, I'll talk about it later. It's an informal educational platform, but that's why Jan said it's collective of collectives, because then it's not only ruangrupa. The voice is not even ruangrupa is already collective, many voices inside it, but after at that moment 18 years of practicing, we felt the need to kind of function differently for an ecosystem. And then by ganging up together with other collectives from Jakarta that we've worked together a lot of times before, it only make sense at that moment to become a collective of collectives, and it's also a test of what we can be, because we like to change, we like to iterate ourselves, let's say. And then, so that's why it looks like a river with also many branches, because that journey changes, of course. It started way before Documenta, with when we understood it before, like how we share resources between ourselves, like ruangrupa Seromen Grafis Uruhara, and that's why also we became an educational platform in order for us to share further to other people. But then Documenta came and be part of our ecosystem. So the journey kind of like got altered, no? With the process for us, Documenta 15 has started when this process of keep on inviting others to imagine what a Documenta edition could be, and seeing Documenta as a bank of resources further. But the 100 days, of course, is an important stop, as you can see here, maybe like after different type of journeys, and then it congregate, or it gets into a big stream with the 100 days, which we understand right now. We like to understand right now as a public celebration of that process up until that moment. So it's a very important moment in the journey, but then the journey won't stop there. So it should not be, because we are doing Lumbung anyway, with or without Documenta. Although, as I said, having Documenta as part of an ecosystem, of course, altered the journey itself. But then that journey should continue as well. We ask every one, when it's possible, to also treat our invitation that way. So it's not making something exclusively for Documenta, especially for the 100 days, but as a continuation of their practice already, their existing practice, and to prepare for further, like to speculate on the future, let's say, what they can become afterwards. So I think that's why this image is being drafted right now. And there's a possibility that you will see another version of this image later during the 100 days. But for now, this is what I can share. And then for those who ask about us, like in a sense, why we do collective things, and then horizontality, for example, and how we do it, we established ourselves at that moment in 2000 because of the conditions in Jakarta itself, of course, a reaction to it. And then we were young, and you can say that we were punk once, you know. That's how we started. And then as a reaction towards what's already available, what's considered to be valuable by our elderly, and all those kind of stuff. And then we realized that, like, by ganging up together, we can access certain things that is kind of like much harder to access as an individual, as young, whatever, artists, architects, designers, social students, you know, like all sociology students, history students, all those kind of stuff, or fresh graduates. So there are many goals, let's say. We started with that, like different interests by the people who are activating ruangrupa, let's say, and then whether that interest resonate with others. Something like making a student forum, making a video art festival or media art festival, it became in the later stage, or making a a yearly music festival, all those kind of stuff. It came from that, like the interest of at least one actor in our ecosystem, but then it resonates somehow further. So the goals are not that, if we like to use the analogy of soccer because it speaks to a lot of people, at least in Indonesia. Total football, maybe some of you know where it comes from. It comes from the Dutch team at one point, like where people can change positions, but also not only that we're playing not to win, let's say, but also to kind of like to have different goals and then be aware of it and then be well with it. Because of that, a lot of times, and then it's also right now the process of doing documenta is a proof of that a lot of people got confused, and sometimes we are still confused as well about ourselves. Like we cannot grasp everything in one go, which is fine for us, but it can be frustrating for others. So, but the constant time that we spend, the more time we spend, is actually kind of like, it's very worthwhile. At least for us, that's the way we look at it, because it's going to be a mess in any way. The question whether we can make it a beautiful mess, an enjoyable mess or not. So I think that's the challenge we like to pose to ourselves time and time again after a while. And then this is an example. Like when we were talking about, like, you know, invite, who should we extend our invitations to? What we call right now Lumbung artist, we kind of like, it's collective decision, not only by Ruangrupa this time, but it's further with the artistic team, which just, like, you know, started to really know how we work by mid 2019, let's say. And then it's kind of like nice because when we finally finalize this list, we like to sit down with the list, because for every one of us, it says it's a surprise. We couldn't come up, like as Ruangrupa, for example, we couldn't come up with this list ourselves. Only maybe 50% of them we know. Other than that, because of COVID as well, we have to trust others to make the selection. And then, although we don't like to see ourselves as representation, or like we strive against representational geographical approach. That's why also we put time zones instead of country or city next to everyone's names, because sometimes, you know, they're actually whatever Lebanese, but I was already working in Berlin, all those kind of stuff. So the complexities cannot be absorbed by this type of representational thing. But the reaction to it is actually kind of also valuable for us. Like most people, like especially from the art world, they don't know 80% of the names. It's like they need to Google everyone, all those kind of stuff. We like that it, although it's a byproduct, we didn't intend to do so, but I think the process came to this surprise, let's say. And then to surprise people like that, I think it's very worthwhile to do. That's why. And then again, how we pick them, I think it's much more about the feeling and intuition but also discussions, many discussions between us, like whether it's interesting for us and the process, the journey, to learn from them. doesn't really matter where they're coming from, but how they practice their type of artistic practice to the context that they are in. And then if it's also kind of like translatable to Castle, you know, because working with Documenta, that challenge needs to be taken as well, let's say. So whether there, we learn throughout the process right now, we're still learning that some of them can handle it much better than others. What we don't want to do is like to be part of Documenta, break things up and make it a negative impact, because it's a trap as well, we know, including for the type of practices like ourselves, you know. So that's one way to say about things. And then Lumbung members, that was Lumbung artists. With Lumbung members, we work much more closely in imagining what the Documenta 15 could be. So if you come to Castle during the 100 days in June, July, August, September, this imagination is not solely ruangrupas, let's say, but with these names at least, if not more, because again, luckily our protocol is to trust them, what's going to work for them, especially relating to their context. It will be also a big surprise for us what the 100 days will bring, and then how it will share the experience, how the experience can be shareable and all those kind of stuff. And then just a little story maybe, but like we thought we could work for Lumbung members, we could work with 20-ish people, but in the end we stopped with 14 only, because it has been proven when we got into 14, even Zooming with 14 collectives is just like already super challenging. So we stopped there. And then, yeah, it's kind of like the journey itself has been enjoyable that way. It has never been a boring one day at all, because ideas keep on coming, building on top of each other, etc. Now maybe it's more about the collective of collectives, Good School itself. This is why Lumbung was experimented with before. Well, in Good School, it's kind of like the understanding of resources. What does it mean to congregate resources? Then it's not only tangible aspects like money, space, time, etc., but also intangible like knowledge and skills and even human resource, you know. So how to govern them together with many other interests that we thought is could be our focus, let's say. So artistic knowledge building and self-sustainability is something that we keep on testing. And then the names you saw before, at least from our side in ruangrupa, the way we look at it is like, these are the people we could learn from, at least one of the aspects, let's say, at least in one of the aspects in this thing. But this diagram, let's say, was a development from a more crude diagram before. It's like this. It's still like different collectives ganging up together, put something in the center, and all those kind of stuff, which we are kind of like realize as well that we don't need to centralize resources either. Just to take an analogy, the money in your pocket, let's say if you are practicing lumbung, the money in your pocket is also not only yours, but also others. but you can keep it. You can use it up until a certain extent. Self-limitation is one values that we trust, we believe in. Then, but always be prepared to share it with others who are in need. So with using this analogy, we kind of like dwell on this kind of diagrammatic explanations, and then it keep on developing, let's say. And then this is what one translation of Lumbung, one translation of Lumbung could be. It's like there is a space for social, there's space for living, and there's space for resources to be stored. And then hopefully you anyone who come to at least Documenta 15 could understand it that way as well, and then can take something out of Documenta 15 later, if not even beyond Documenta 15. Yeah, so I would take this opportunity to talk about conflict maybe. Conflict happens to us every day. Sometimes we're it's not smooth. We also were not established to prove certain theories. Let's say horizontality is one big thing of the one big element of collective sometimes that, like, you know, we learn from other collectives who were built to prove certain theories that it's really difficult for them to sustain, let's say, because of that. Like they spend most of their time and energy to prove certain theories instead of like, you know, being agile and like listening, talking to others, understand what the ecosystem needs, and also transfer their practice following that need to be part of an ecosystem, let's say, not only like, you know, to be a player in it, but to be generous towards other actors as well. I think that's why it's important for us, the space, because ruang and rupa, ruang is space, rupa is visual, but ruang, that part of the name has always been important. Honestly, that's why when I was still a student back in 2003, 2004, early 2000, I was interested in them, in ruangrupa to begin with. I think a big part of it is because of the name, because of the space in the name, let's say. Then I think coming back to football thing, this is how we are doing things right now, especially because of COVID. We make things digital. We make like Zoom is our, unfortunately, I have to say, is our environment mainly, like right now, which comes with so many challenges for our type of practice, where, like, you know, when we like to congregate people under one roof, spend time, waste time with each other, all those kind of stuff, because without that, I think it's really, really difficult to practice collectivity, at least our understanding of collectivity. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to become, like, you know, a collection of hackers or anonymous anarchist and all those kind of stuff, who doesn't need to know each other, but trust in the system. But what we have done is, like, we become friends first, and then understanding what ticks at each other, and then afterwards things can happen organically. That way we have wasted our time towards each other, so it's easier to work with each other. And then during the process, actually, a lot of people come and go. I've come and go as well several times, for example, because we cannot force certain time or stage of life to people that they need to stay always with us, because, like, you know, art doesn't pay that well to begin with. art collectives even worse, I think, with at least from our experience. What we've managed is to experiment with different type of fairness and transparency, how much we have at one point, how we share it. Again, like Lumbung, like the money in my pocket is actually not only mine, but I can share it with others, abstractly at least that way. But yeah, it's never easy. And then it's just like part of life, let's say, that people come and go. Sometimes they agree to begin with, and then they disagree, they need to go. And then maybe in the future, they find themselves in agreement again. But yeah, it's like always ebb and flow, let's say, and we're open to it. It helps sometimes when it gets crystallized, like in Documenta, then we become 9% responsible for it. But in reality, back home in Jakarta, it's much more difficult to pinpoint who are ruangrupa, who are not, who are in good school, what's the ecosystem of good school, where it ends, where it starts, all those kind of stuff. It's much more loose. Only like, you know, by experiencing us, it's much more easy to understand us in compared to like, you know, this type of sharing, I have to say. So I think I'm almost in the end of my sharing session, but just like to share with you another part of the process. We, through making Documenta 15, working with so many people throughout time, we think about harvesting. That's what we call it, continuing the agricultural lingo that we're using to begin with. But this type, what you're seeing right now, is one type of harvesting. So how we can share our process and hopefully others can take knowledge out of it that way. That's why during 100 days, we think about it as a public celebration of harvest. So there will be a lot of these things that you can see and experience, and also in different formats. And then hopefully also visitors can be part of this further. Maybe not entirely up to us and owned by us and designed by us and controlled by us, but that's what we're trying to see, whether it's possible for people to take Lumbung as theirs, make it theirs, and then what it could end up in, let's say, at least for a given time, which relatively small, but hopefully enough that we can waste it with each other. And then when I say we, I think then it's becoming bigger than ruangrupa as well. Right now I cannot only say things for ruangrupa, but also for our collaborators. And I think that's it for now, at least my part with visuals, and hopefully it's not too long and not too boring. And yeah, I would like to hear more from you as well. So making it a discussion. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Drew, for sharing all the diagrams and images. I would like to actually, what was for me like really interesting in the document that you shared with us was the thing that like the thing of eating together is important for you as a collective, and it kind of reminds me one sentence that said Ben Patterson, like I'm a member of Fluxus, that art can be anything, but it's better when you can eat it. Can you please jump more into this topic of like collective eating, cooking with each other, etc., or like what are you eating when you are working together?
Thank you very, very much for the question. One way to answer it maybe is an anecdote, another anecdote. Like I'm in Ruru House right now, a space that we kind of like, we fought for to happen for Documenta 15, because that's the way, again, like space is a way for us to imagine or organize events. Without it, we're kind of like, we're paralyzed. We don't know what to do. We don't know how to land in a foreign context in this way, castle. And we've done that several times. And this time is actually in the biggest scale that in foreign context, biggest scale that we could do it in time, in space, etc. And then like ruangrupa's office mainly happened in the kitchen. There's a table in the kitchen overflowing with stuff, not necessarily food, but like papers and all those kind of stuff, which is kind of like, but we like it that way. It's not necessarily that it's for, you know, cleanliness for work and thinking alone and all those kind of stuff, but letting us in our work to be, because if you're sitting in the kitchen, especially in this type of shared space, then you cannot help but being bothered by others, no? So whether they're bringing their own food or they're trying to cook, and sometimes we also stage, of course, like cooking together, eating together, that, yeah, of course, with Corona, then it becomes like much less, but for health reasons. But I think the sensibility of sitting and enjoying something together, we cannot replace it, especially in the same space. And then, yeah, food is interesting. It's kind of like weird as well, because weirdly enough, a lot of people that we are working with right now, they're also working with food without us really talking about it, you know? Making recipes, and recipes as one way to one storytelling way to explain about where they're coming from and their cosmology, because the logic of taste, etc., might be a vehicle towards that stories. But also, I think, like, as you said, the act of enjoying it and consuming it together, it brings understanding towards like a gut understanding, let's say, you know. So you understand it not from the brain, not only from the heart, but also from like your intuition and from the gut. That's what we call it, at least the gut understanding of things. And that's why experiencing us a lot of times is much more closer to comprehending than, like, you know, exchanges in words only, or like in presentation format, let's say. Hopefully I start answering your question, Jan.
Yes, thank you. Also, to the participant, please feel free to ask directly or like write the questions to the chat. Farid, maybe we can jump to the questions that I sent you in advance. I don't know, like, how we should do it. If you will just like pick something, or you are muted, by the way.
Yeah, sorry, but maybe, oh yeah, I can start answering the questions you gave me before, I think. Like, Good School, for example, was founded as a reaction, of course, but not against the formal education we have in Indonesia. It's kind of like funny fact that we started with, like, you know, a lot of people, a lot of artists in Indonesia have made collective practice as like the way to practice art. A lot of them. If you met Indonesian artists, just ask them, whether they're part of a collective. Most probably they will be part at least one collective, if not more. So like, I don't know in percentage, but like lately after 1998, when we congregate between each other, with each other, becomes one of the main ways, let's say. But then the education, the formal education is still, up until now, they are still very, very focused on, you know, and this is not unique to Indonesia, I think, focused on creating individual geniuses, you know, which beg the question from our side. Then it's just like, what's the connection with reality? And then, because at least we have certain knowledge in that department, so we just like, you know, maybe we can offer something that is complementary to what's already available out there. And then it becomes like collective and ecosystem building and contemporary art. That's how we like to explain what good school is. So the connection is actually kind of like come and go, with at least from our main ecosystem back home, you know. It's only lately that they become like, after Documenta, they started seeing and realizing that there's value in what we're doing, in the way we're doing things, maybe. But we want to push it even not only in the making or in the production of things, but also in the product. So how could collective art be understood as a product as well, not only as a, but not only as a process. But it's still a struggle that we are dealing with right now. We don't have the answer to it yet, not even close. And then maybe also
yes, I must say that there is this one punk question that I wrote in advance. I was studying out loud. The video portfolio mapping your activities within the years 2000, 2014 has some scent of punk, like in the good way. Does it change? It is possible to work within big institutional structures that involves large-scale organization, human resources, etc., and still keep the riff of punk? And if so, why is it important for a collective to keep the soul of that kind? Yes, I have currently punk identity problems, so maybe you can help me.
Yeah, we have that as well. As I said before, we were punks once, you know. And then it's kind of like funny to, I don't know, maybe it's also sad if we still like we still pretend that we're that young. We're not that young anymore, no. In ruangrupa, but we were young ones as well. We want to keep it, and we want to kind of like support, like why we establish ourselves is to support young bloods, and then we're still trying to do it with like our exhibitions, our programs, our events, our festivals, all those kind of stuff. But as you said, the question, especially when we need to be, when we're forced to be professionals, you know, like where we're at right now, then it's a give and take. We push it as far as we could, but also it's kind of like we would never get anywhere by insisting the chaotic way of doing things the way we want it to be, let's say. It's just like going to be hard or stubbornness that way, which for others might work, but for us it's not the case. For us, it's better to understand where we're coming from, and then also understand where others coming from, and then negotiate, let's say. So the way we understand it, right now, at least if you refer to the big institutions as Documenta and then Documenta 15 as part of the Lumbung, this what you're going to see is a Lumbung Documenta version, like with musicians, albums, for example. There's a live version, there's like remastered version, or publications as well, books, like a bridge version, full version, translated version, all those kind of stuff. So this is, we have to be honest, this is a Documenta version. Not, it will be different than Jakarta version, for example, or ruangrupa only version, but it is a version that we can share with the bigger public right now. So I think we'd like to kind of like understand and sometimes being nostalgic about the times that we could be fully, ourselves. And then, but we have to be honest as well that actually we've matured as well. We've gone through certain things, and then we have to also own it. The question is how can we own it? Let's say, given our past and also the present challenges, and then how to build our future, let's say.
Yes, thank you. I think this somehow continues to the next question with the language, or like with the thing that we told before the presentation. So you use an accessible language, which is quite in a contrast with the hard language Newspeak. Even in our context, this can be very difficult to follow. How it is for you and your collective to navigate in this terminology, or more so, how do you feel when your easily accessible statements are transformed through interpretation into like fluffy, let's say, artistic language?
Yeah, we did it on purpose because not all of us can speak good English anyway, maybe including myself, but you be the judge on that. So we realized that the artwork has built a wall around itself by using certain language that's kind of like hard to penetrate. And then I think instead of talking about it, we just like do it, like practice it. How to create text and entry points that actually it's approachable. It doesn't have to be dumbed down, but the challenge is to make it approachable. And it's not only challenge to us, but to our collaborators as well. Not everyone agrees in that matter, let's say, because it's also a matter of habits. But so far, I think accessibility becomes pushed furthermore. Then we're lucky enough to work with a lot of other people who have understood this question of accessibility in different ways, even practically, from neurodiversity up until inclusivity towards other genders, up until even like non-human, if we want to stretch it that way. So in the process of building communication strategies, we have been influenced by a lot of people. And then we're lucky as well that it's not too hard to strive for it institutionally. Everyone, I think the people that we're working with kind of like majority in agreement with that. Like, it's okay to be approachable, and easy read is another one. Like, not everyone is born smart, does it mean that they cannot enjoy what we have to offer? I think that's supposed to be questioned, at least interrogated. Then us and our collaborators came up with the strategies of easy read, although it's not perfect, not at all. But it's an experiment that we can push to do for now, and we can learn, and then we can grow with it further, I think, and not only us in the team, but maybe for others, including you and your context, let's say.
Yes, I will just put on the top of this as also like the web page of Documenta 15 itself has the option to switch into like easily accessible language, which I really appreciate. Maybe I will continue with the question from a chat. Poina is asking you that she's also coming from a punk scene back in the days, and she's wondering which tools are you using in cases of remote collective collaboration? Which environment do you prefer for working together online, especially for planning, meaning organizers, shared calendars, task managing, sharing, and shaping visions, spreading responsibilities, etc. Or another part of the question, it is important to keep it organized.
Yes, it's not. Or we can't help but be disorganized. But it's just because how we are, you know. Even, but we always that helps. But ourselves, it's super hard to be organized all the time. And then the digital turn has been very hard on us, I have to be honest. It would be very different if, like, you know, most of us can be meeting in person, like since 2020, you know, like all those kind of stuff. It would be super different Documenta, but it is what it is, you know, and then we have to work with our limitations as well. And then I have to be also honest that like what's available in the market right now, especially the ones that can handle that pressure of, like, you know, having 180 participants in one room and all those kind of stuff, then it became things that you all know already as well. WhatsApp, Zoom, Google Docs, Nextcloud, and all those kind of stuff is the way for us to keep on communicating with each other. Although we realized by doing it, like the limitations of it, how it doesn't sit well with how we like to do stuff, you know. So maybe one way to do it is to make ourselves, which is on the way. I don't know whether it's going to be successful, but like one of the projects Good School is doing for Documenta is that, like, making an environment for a good school to be able to be translated to digital format. But the success of it will have to wait and see still, and it will be like yeah, it's already in the internet and website format, and then whether it's going to be gamified, all those kind of stuff. We have to wait and see. But yeah, it's super tough. It's really it's a really time consuming, energy consuming, with not that much positive results to try to do things digitally for us. Maybe we're old that way as well, we have to say, you know. Maybe it's easier for those who come after us who are digital natives. Maybe they don't have as much trouble as us, but right now us it has not been a smooth transition.
Yes, I see, but can you see, like, in the process, because like with the beginning of the COVID, we just needed to jump from day to day into the digital world, and like somehow transformed everything without knowing often the technologies, etc. Do you think, like, if this experience somehow enrich the collective itself?
Yes, one thing that we're lucky is that like we considered Lumbung when we kind of like made that invitation to Documenta, inviting them back to be part of our journey. We saw it as like a preemptive move towards or against a crisis that is to come, you know. But it's kind of like funny that the crisis came before we expected. So there are a lot of positivities coming from there. Like it would be also harder for us to argue for the values of our approach, let's say, in the pre-COVID world, where everything is fine, you know, like, and there's no like doing stuff together, being together, and all those kind of stuff are not as enjoyable as it is right now, you know, because everyone is thirsty, hungry, wanting more of like being together again, and then understand how fragile the old system is, let's say, and then looking for other ways to do stuff, no? And being collective is only one way, not the way, but the at least one way to try to come up with an answer. So it has been easier. It has been easier to talk to people about what we're doing, and also another thing is like right now, no, like you don't need me to be traveling to be with you, but I can speak to you and then connect with you, although very surface level, but at least we don't have to like, you know, to make a tour just to make ourselves understandable more, you know, and people are used to it by now. So I think in that way, our carbon footprint is so much less than what it used to be, but also the essentials, let's say, you know, like people are, or we are traveling only for the essentials only now. So it's in that way, I'm okay with it. I can make peace with it.
Thank you. I would also like to go back to the questions that I sent you beforehand. In your CSED, you use the word friend occasionally. Is this a reality or more an ideal vision of collective practice that you work with friends and not with colleagues? In my experience, I feel that it is maybe more easily sustainable to keep work and private life slightly separate. When they cross, emotions and shared histories often step in and might create inequalities inside the crew.
Yeah, that's totally correct, I think. Like, but each of us in ruangrupa at least, made the decision long ago with the consequences we're still paying up until now, that it's kind of hard to separate those. For better or worse, your choice, but it is what it is. And then it's almost like my chosen family by now. And then sometimes what I'm afraid of is like, you know, doing something like Documenta, when we were talking about before in the end of 2018, should we do something for Documenta? That's one of my biggest fears, that we break up, you know, then it would be sad. That would be very sad for me. But yeah, friends, like Documenta, ruangrupa was founded in 2000, but the friendship lasts longer than that. Like when the founders were still in school, and their friends making, like, you know, knowing each other by making musical events, mostly hardcore musical events, like hardcore punks musical events, etc., in the suburbs of Jakarta. And then they know each other by that, and then bring someone else from Jogja and all those kind of stuff. We didn't gang up for work. That's how we started. It became more and more and more and more work through time. And then we realized that we could make a living out of it, or not, maybe in the future, we'll see. But up until now, it's still okay. By process. So as I said as well, not to romanticize it, a lot of people also have fallen through, like they're not with us anymore, you know? So I do agree that sometimes it's difficult to separate those things, but different people from us, at least for now, have different answers to that, to keep that balance. Whether drawing a very fine line, like time, space, like, no, this is it, like this is as much as I can give, everyone needs to deal with it, or like make their private part of the private parts of their lives also in ruangrupa. Luckily, at least out of the 9 of us, if not more actually, you remind me of that, like the question reminds me of that, like it's very little that we, like, you know, we're partnering with each other, like couples and families and all those kind of stuff. It doesn't happen between us. Maybe it's also key to survive in collectives. Just don't sleep with each other. Because then it makes things complicated. Learning from other collectives as well makes things more complicated than it already is, you know. So I don't know how we could do it because it's not intentional, I would say, but we just maybe became like, you know, we're too close between each other that we don't see each other that way, in that romantic way or something. But yeah, no, it just crossed my mind that that's a fact. I never saw it from that point of view.
Yes, thank you for this, and also I'm glad that you point to the word of like the romanticization of collectiveness, because in one of the interviews, you, like ruangrupa, talk about the internal structure of the collective. You said that there is a director, a manager, etc. I understood that up to a certain point, these positions are more orientational than that this position imply any truly bureaucratic practice. Can you imagine the collective functioning for so many years without these positions? So against the horizontal.
Yeah. We came up with that structure as a fictional structure to begin with, in order to legalize ourselves so we can access certain fundings. So it's an artwork in itself. Sometimes we think about it that way. We could change it anytime when it's needed, you know. As like, you know, total football as well. Sometimes people can change positions, and then we realize it from the get-go. But without stating that, like as I said, it's fictional as well, semi-fictional, let's say, or half fictional, because without that, without succumbing to that request, we wouldn't be able to sustain ourselves financially, at least, you know. We're talking about realistic thing right now, practical. So we're doing it to sustain ourselves financially, so we can kind of like get some resources. So practically, it wouldn't be possible, but conceptually, of course, it's possible. It depends on which level you're addressing that question to. But that would be my answer. Unless there is someone can come up with a better strategies or tactics than that, then at least that's our tactics up until now. If anyone has the better tactics, then it would be great to learn from.
Yes, thank you. Me too. uh, Back to the list, as ruangrupa mentioned in one video profile for the Goethe Institute, the Asian, Southeast Asian, and Indonesian regions have historically been underrepresented in documenta actions. In the context of this situation, how or do you feel any pressure to act as an advocate or representative to speak on behalf of your region?
Yeah, as I said, I think like our approach was not representational or geographical, especially, you know. So we're never comfortable doing that, like representing the voice and all those kind of stuff. Maybe it just happened that like a lot of people we're working with also came from certain contexts, but like, you know, global south or third world country and all those kind of stuff, I would put it in the same level with like those conceptions were useful at one point, no? Like in 1955 when Documenta was established in Bandung, Indonesia, the non-block, the non-aligned movement was established as well. Global south, the third world, all those kind of stuff came from that type of movements, and it was very useful at that moment. But right now we wouldn't use those because of the association it came with, and you know, and like reproducing certain relations, let's say. But like global south, third world, all those kind of stuff, we haven't been able to come up with a better solution yet either, or a replacement term. What we can do is like, you know, locations formerly known as global south. That's how we refer to it right now. And then even when you ask, well, you know, another anecdote is like when a question whether we would be interested in representing Indonesia in something like Venice or somewhere else, you know, with that logic. Up until now, we have to decline that type of offers because, yeah, again, it's because of our discomfort of being a representation of something bigger than us. You know, what we can do is like we speak for with our voice, where we're based on where we're coming from, but it doesn't mean that we can speak for the whole Indonesia, for example. That's not why we're doing things.
Yes, but you get in touch from, I don't know, from the side of the like big institutions, biennales, etc., to that they were like welcoming this kind of approach.
Yeah, whether our approach, yeah, again, like this is our approach, which like, you know, influenced by Jakarta, that happens to be in Indonesia, that happens to be in the global south, at least up until now. But if that's the connection it's making, it's okay. But the other way around, it's kind of like then we will find the discomfort, you know. So whether it's almost like, you know, the question of inclusivity, it's already like presuppose uh, a thing of like certain power relations, something that include others, no? So up until now, luckily enough that we still can negotiate, that we at maybe it's an illusion, maybe not, but we know that we are dealing, we don't have to change ourselves to be more civilized, let's say, you know. So far it's okay, although I think there are a lot of things to learn from this experience we are having right now to things in the future, so we don't fall into the same traps again.
Yes, I see. And if I understood it correctly, like your practice is presenting the mechanisms, the networking or the methodologies, like the invisible structures that are standing behind, but that shapes the visible. And lately, I've been seeing these kind of principles in a lot of students' artworks.
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah, like they're creating connections, relationships, or renewing former ones that needed like a new kind of sensibility. Unfortunately, when these words are confronted with the institutionalized, I mean by this like academic system of evaluation, they oftenly clash. Often the methods of representation, like an object is expected, like something I can look at, and what is presented is a methodology. How do you advocate this kind of practice in the art systems, like in the art system that are obsessed with the visual?
Yeah, good school is one answer for us to that. Just build your own system, because the old system is just like, well, like, you know, it's made for that already. When you get big enough or important enough and vital enough, then the clash will happen. So clash is actually a good sign if it happens at all. If one is going under the other, then that's problem. I think, like surfing the other one, making itself so it's understandable by the power that be. Then I think that's the real struggle where it is right now. But like, yes, it's clear that the system wouldn't be able to absorb that for us. So even when the system tried to change itself, it's sometimes, a lot of times it's just like make up. It's not real change from within. At least I haven't experienced the one that actually kind of like sincerely want to change their ways. Hopefully your experience has been or will be different than mine. But from our experience, what I can say is just like build your own, don't believe in it. So use it the way, if it's usable at all, use it, parasite it, but yeah, realize that that's what you're doing. Don't succumb to that pressure, I think. And yeah, unfortunately, I have to go soon. Maybe one more question, Jan, if you don't mind, and everyone else.
Yes, of course, I have an easy one. Actually, thank you for this last answer, because this is like, for me, this is like kind of like a punk approach to doing things, like to build your own structures, to build your own methods, your own institutions, etc. Yeah, thank you for this. Okay, so I have easy one for the end. How do you know when to speak and when to listen?
I prefer to listen, if you ask me, you know. Then the questions actually kind of like gave that insight to me. But I think it's natural as well. And then when we know each other well, individuals in a collective, then we know who likes to speak, who likes to listen, and we have to intentionally play with it as well, I think. Like give parts or force certain part to those who like to speak, more listening part, you know, like again, role, like, or change the roles, like role the functions, let's say, as well. So it wouldn't be always the same way. But it's a tough one. It's an easy question, but it's one with a difficult answer. Uh, uh, Listening is like, you know, the way I like to understand it, it's like listening is a much harder art to practice than speaking. And then especially because it's invisible as well. So relating to what, like, you know, the obsession of something visible leads us to that as well. Like invisible works are usually the most difficult works to master because no one is giving it the value, so no one wants to do it. But those who are doing it properly are not really valued for that, all those kind of stuff. So I think listening is much more important at this moment.
Okay, thank you for this. I think this is like, at least for me, this is a really nice end. So thank you a lot for being with us this evening. Hope we can see or hear each other in the near future. And yes, and what I can say is let's listen to each other.
Thank you very, very much. Let's waste time with each other more.
Thank you.
Hopefully later in the future, hopefully we can get the real chance in the real world.
Bye.
Thank you.
See you
Ciao.
later. Thank you. Bye.